In many ways, you can see that we have very strong convergences with the United States. At the same time, we are China's largest neighbor. We share a land boundary. We want stable relations with China. They are a very large trade partner as well, a very imbalanced trade, but still a very large trade account. So for us, how to sort of steady the China relationship, create an equilibrium that is fair to us. At the same time, how do you work the convergences with the United States and get the most out of it? I mean, that's frankly the way we would approach it.
So moving on, you've taken a strong stance on cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan. What is India's message to global powers and international institutions on this issue? And what diplomatic and strategic red lines remain with Pakistan?
This morning I was at an exhibition on terrorism at the United Nations. This was something which our embassy, our mission to the UN had organized. And the reason we did that, we had a number of ambassadors from other countries who were there as well, is because we believe that terrorism is actually a threat to everybody. That no country should use it as an instrument to further its policies, because at the end of the day it comes back to bite everyone. And if we take the view that one terrorist act or one terrorist organization or one sponsor of terrorism is justified here, or you give them a free pass or you underplay it, it can easily happen. In fact, it does happen in other situations. So there has to be, the message to the world has to be that there should be zero tolerance for terrorism, that there should be no circumstances, no excuse, no justification under which you would allow, support, finance, sponsor terrorist acts. Now, in our particular case, we unfortunately had an experience of this. The experience has been very intense for the last 4 decades. But actually it started from the time of our independence. If you see, within a few months of our independence, terrorists were sent into Kashmir with this idea that they are proxies and they are tribal invaders, and then soon enough the Pakistani army followed. So we have battled terrorism really intensively for the last 4 decades, and we've had some horrific cases. Everybody would remember the Mumbai attack, and where really a major global metropolis was, for a few days really brought to a standstill with attacks on a scale which could not be contemplated, and which particularly targeted foreigners, especially of this country. We've had an attack on our parliament, a parliament meeting in session with the intent of taking lawmakers and the people governing India hostage at that time. That it was foiled was a different matter. But do look at the dangerous intent and the risks inherent in an enterprise like this. We've had a string of these attacks, and we've now reached a point, and I think in many ways the Pahalgam terrorist attack on April 22nd, this sentiment in India that look, enough is enough. That we are, because the Pahalgam was meant, it was an act of economic warfare. It was meant to destroy tourism in Kashmir, which was the mainstay of the economy. It was also meant to provoke religious violence, because people were asked to identify their faith before they were killed. So we decided that we cannot let terrorists function with impunity. The idea that they're on that side of the border and that therefore prevents retribution, I think is a proposition that needs to be challenged, and that is what we did. So now bear in mind, these are not people who operate in secret. These are terrorist organizations who have the equivalent of their corporate headquarters in the populated towns of Pakistan. Everybody knows what is the headquarters of organization A and organization B, and those are actually the buildings, the headquarters that we destroyed. So we are very clear, there will be no impunity for terrorists, that we will not deal with them any longer as proxies and spare the government which supports and finances in many ways motivates them. We will not allow nuclear blackmail to prevent us from responding, because we've also heard this for too long, that you are both nuclear countries, therefore the other guy will come and do horrible things, but you mustn't do anything because it gets the world worried. Now we are not going to fall for that. If he is going to come and do things, we are going to go there and also hit the people who did this. So no yielding to nuclear blackmail, no impunity to terrorists, no more free pass that they are proxies. And we will do what we have to do to defend our people.
India has been active in forums such as the G-20 and the UN. What reforms do you believe are necessary in global governance institutions to reflect the realities of the 21st century?
It's interesting that you put G20 and UN together. And I'll tell you why it's interesting. Because before the G20 came, there was something called the G7. Okay, the G7 were primarily Western countries. Japan, for this purpose, was a Western country. Now, the G7 finally reformed. It reformed under compulsion. That when the global financial crisis of 2008-2009 happened, the G7 realized, G7, G8, because Russia was part of it then, they realized that they couldn't handle this on their own and they needed to expand it and bring in other countries, and that's how the G20 came about. Now, the UN Security Council today faces the same predicament as the G7, which is, if you look at the big issues of the day, actually they've not been able to do very much. You have what's going on in Gaza. You saw there's a war going on in Ukraine. You had this Iran-Israel stuff. You had the biggest challenge of the century in the pandemic. And I ask you, where was the UN in all of this? Nowhere. So if we are serious about keeping the UN relevant, which we believe in, it's not our case that the UN should be done away with. But the UN needs updating, UN needs refreshing. So if we are now heading for 80 years of the UN, it makes when the UN was founded, there were 50 members. Today there are almost 200. So think of it in any domain. If there's a quadrupling, if your shareholders have quadrupled, if your numbers of students have grown 4 times, if your employees have grown 4 times, how can you continue working the same way? It doesn't make any sense. But the G20 shows that it can be done. And we hope at some stage the UN, because I can tell you the majority of members want change. That the problem is a few who are blocking it, using arcane procedures and wanting. I think they're not even serving their own interest well, because what they are doing is they think they're protecting their interest, but they're harming the institution. So overall, actually, their investment is getting less value there.